Hello, everyone. Welcome on in. It is this week's Betting Weekly Dojo with me, your host, Nigel Seeley, and my co host, Neil Channing. Before I introduce Neil, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Do join us on the dojo and do join us on the channel, the Betting Weekly Studios. We're fast approaching 8,000 subscribers and almost 1 million views. So thank you very much. And hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, we can achieve both of those targets, which is an amazing turnaround that we have done this year on the channel with your help. Neil, good morning to you, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
Hi, Nigel. Yeah, I'm actually really buzzing today because it's only a week to go till the Oscars. I absolutely love the Oscars, and people say to me, why do you like the Oscars and stuff? That seems a funny thing for you to be into. And I'm into it because I like gambling on it, which is that's pretty ridiculous. Obviously,
Why do you like
that's why I'm
anything,
into
Neil?
it. Yeah,
That's why you
I
like
know.
lots of things in your life.
It's terrible, isn't
Gambling.
it? I do like the Oscars. I think I could watch the Oscars if I didn't have a bet on it. I think I could, and I would enjoy it. But I enjoy it so much more because of the gambling. And one of the things I really like about gambling on the Oscars is, and I think you'll appreciate this, it kind of goes back to old style bookmaking. Nobody really knows. Like when you get, I don't know, say the sort of, the documentary feature or something. There's 5 films. Even there's 10,000 people that vote in the Academy. You can abstain if you don't want to vote on a category. About half of the people that vote, they're like actors, people that have been nominated in the past, that kind of thing, are on the Academy. About half of them put abstain because they haven't even watched the films. So the idea that the bookies have watched them or everyone betting in the market has watched them is kind of ridiculous. And the market shapes weeks in advance of the Oscars, and it's like the way it used to be. Like you have to be an odds compiler. You have to go and do your homework. You have to try and read the reviews of all the films, and then weigh that up and try and put a price on it. And I just think in the world of sports gambling that we're in these days, you don't get to do that very often. Use your opinion and form and actually no one's got a really strong opinion, and there's not like a huge amount traded on these markets, and so the prices just all over the place. I've bet all kinds of things, generally short odds. I've bet things at -200, -300, and then you look the next day and they're like -600. I mean, when would that ever happen in a football match?
Never. Unless it was like the Ishmael League third division or something, like Southern South or something like that. I mean, I've this is it. You'll see on this edition here. We're having an Oscar special here, so we're going to talk about gambling. Neil's top 5 gambling films. We was going to do top 10, but we couldn't run the show on for the length of time it would take to get through the top 10. And we're also going to talk about the Oscars from a betting perspective at the end of the show. This Oscars is obviously Monday night, wherever you are in the world. And you'll see from this show that I have nothing to contribute to this show at all. I mean, I don't have much to contribute anyway when Neil gives his knowledge here. But the one thing I would say is I've never watched an Oscar ceremony. Never watched one.
I mean, that one where the fella punched the other fella. I mean, that
I've
was a
watched the
great
clip.
one.
I've never
Or the one
watched
where
it. I
they
watched the
read out
clip.
the wrong result for the best film. I mean, you've
Seen
literally
the
only
clip
got
for
one
that.
job. I
I've
mean,
seen
all
the
of
clip for
those
that.
things are great. I think they're usually quite funny. People have invaded the stage before. There's protests. The speeches are often quite political. I think that's another aspect.
Ricky Gervais is
Yeah, no, well,
was
that's
that
not the
Oscars?
Oscars. That's
Was the
I
Golden
think that's
Globes?
the Golden Globes or something
Never
like
watched
that.
that
I
either.
don't know. Yeah, I
Do you know
haven't
what
spent
you're
a lot of
talking
time on
about?
that.
You talk about sort of you think you're betting on a level playing field, and you do the reviews and stuff like that. I mean, but this is another subject for a dojo. Obviously, that how some of these markets, which markets you do think you bet on a level playing field without anybody knowing some inside information. And unfortunately, obviously, at the moment, that you'll hear where I'm going on this one, right? Obviously, the Pope at the moment is not, and we obviously hope for a speedy recovery for the Pope. But
Sorry,
I
I'm not
remember.
laughing at the Pope guy. I'm
But I'm
remembering
going
the
to tell you where
obvious
I'll
joke.
tell you where I'm going with this. I'm telling you where I'm going with this. So I remember, talking about how markets. Now you would think, wouldn't you, that the next Pope would be the most, the most uncorrupt market in the whole world, right? Well, I was working. I think I was working at IG Index with you many years ago,
Yeah.
and everyone was betting on trading on who will be the next Pope, and people read up that they're going to give it to the first African Pope and this and first American Pope and various different things. And the market suspended when the white smoke come out of the Vatican, And Thomas Ratzenberger, Pope Ratzenberger,
That's
went
right.
from something like 33-1 to minus 300 in a space of about 20 minutes. Now,
Yeah.
let me tell you something. If people are in the know that who's the next Pope, I'm sure that people will know who's in that envelope for the Oscars. So that's my worry about these kind of
But
markets.
you
But
remember that
anyway,
old joke? Sorry, were
no,
you going to say some more on that?
no, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. No, I wondered if you remembered that old joke about the gambler that got the secret nod on who was going to be the next pope at 33-1. And the next day, his mate sees him and says, "Well, that was great, wasn't it? You must be okay now. You won all that money." And he said, "Oh no," he said, "it's no good. I parlayed it with the Archbishop of Canterbury."
Yeah, well, I mean, that shows you that I'll never forget that day. I remember the white smoke bellowing out of the Vatican. We have a new pope, and looking at the betting markets, and this guy, German guy, Thomas Ratzenberger, had gone. I thought he was the first goal scorer in the Eintracht Frankfurt v Bayer Leverkusen match, but he turned out to be
I
the
haven't
next pope.
actually. I don't know. I'm assuming there is betting on the next pope going on already. I haven't really looked
Oh,
at
hang
that.
on.
Maybe
We've got to
after
be
the
quite
Oscars,
careful.
I'll have a
We've
bit
got
of a
to be
study.
we've got to be quite careful. Obviously, the current pope is. I think they'll have to wait to see what happens.
Well, he
before
may
we find
step
out.
down. I mean, we
Yeah, he
don't
might
have to
step
think
down.
bad
But
things could happen.
all I would say is, if you want to have a bet on it, just look for the betting move. It's pretty much done whenever the betting move comes from there. Let's move on to what this show is about. It's about the Oscars. Obviously, as I say, Monday is the Oscars. Neil obviously told us why he likes it. Do you prepare for the Oscars as though you would do for like a big sporting event like the World
I've
Cup, the
done.
Cheltenham? Is it like that kind of way that you've got your bankroll and you're ready to go? You look forward to it? Is that kind of your
I've done
approach?
hours of work on it. I mean, people say to me, there's some other gamblers say to me, "Why are you so into the Oscars? It's hard to get a bet on it." Actually, I've got down quite well on it. Really, there's plenty of firms offering prices. I did have a look in America. It doesn't seem to be. They used to put up prices in Vegas that were you couldn't actually have a bet on them. They just put them up for information purposes. They'd print out a sheet with the odds on the Oscars. I remember this from like 20 years ago. And I'd pick up the sheet and think, God, that's interesting. Look, I can get plus $1.50 this movie. And, that can't possibly be right. It must be shorter than that. And then I'd go up to the counter and they'd say, oh, no, they're just for entertainment purposes, those odds. We're not allowed to offer prices on them. I mean, now the way things are going in America, it's the market's freeing up all over the place. I'm hopefully there's quite a bit of betting. I haven't seen too much. One of those kind of dodgy exchanges in America seems to have some odds on it. But in the UK, there's lots of firms doing the Oscars. So I don't agree with that argument that it's not worth putting in the time because you can't get much on. I think if you work hard, I have people that moan about not being able to get down. Professional punters always moaning about how they can't get bets on. They're not trying hard enough. Basically, that's the game. But no, I've done lots of work. I mean, just there's 23 categories. There's five in each category. So just to kind of write all the names down when the nominations come out takes half a day. And then, the first lot of prices come. And then the prices really just move, really wildly. Like, for example, in the best movie, Conclave was 8-1 when the nominations came out. It didn't do too good in the first couple of ceremonies, because obviously there's lots of award ceremonies. You got the Screen Actors Guild and the Directors Guild and all this kind of thing, and the BAFTAs and as the awards start coming through, people drift in the betting and they get backed in. Conclave went out to 16-1. And then it won the BAFTA, and the Screen Actors Guild doesn't have a best film; it has a best ensemble cast, but it won that. And now it's into plus 250. So it's gone from plus 1600 to plus 250 just in the last kind of 10 days. The Brutalist opened up even money. You could have plus 800 that now. Anora opened up plus 700. It's minus $2 now. So these are all over the place, these prices. And if you can kind of keep on top of it and kind of catch a wave, you can surf into some profit. I'm loving the Oscars. I hope it's coming across. It's one of my favourite things.
It is. I see you're very chipper. You're very happy about the Oscars. Let you know though, 23 different categories, as Neil said there. And our sponsors, Bet Rivers, have prices on every one of those 23 categories. So you have to check if you're from America and you're American or North America, watch it. Different states have different kind of rules here. But
Oh, I did
it looks
actually. I,
it
I
looks as
did
though there's
actually check to see if Bet Rivers had it. They must have suspended it while the Screen Actors Guild Awards were coming out, and I think I must have looked just when the prices were taken down. So I should have really had a good look at their prices this
they
morning.
have prices on every single market, Neil, including best makeup and hairstyle. And I know that the producer of this channel usually it wasn't up for an award for the hairstyling and the makeup for yourself and me. But I know you said you've had a bet pretty much on every single market. So I'm very interested to see where you've gone on the best makeup and
Well,
hairstyle.
funnily enough, the best makeup and hair, the favourite is The Substance. They're about -800. And that movie is about a sort of a fading star. So maybe that's the one we should bet, really.
Definitely.
Couple of fading old stars.
Yeah, -1430. The Substance to win the best
Is it
makeup and
really?
hairstyling. I think I would like to see you announce that award. You know, to announce the Oscar for best makeup and hairstyling. Put your hands together, please, for professional poker player Neil Channing. Oh, the best
That would be
makeup and hairstyling
outstanding.
goes to... Okay, I think that'd be quite interesting. Now, before we go on to the Oscars, now Neil's going to give us a couple of picks, exclusive picks in Oscars, right? Now, what we did today, we're going to look at the top 10 gambling movies of all time. And we said last week this is what we were going to talk about. Now, Neil has done his top 5 list. Now, before we go on to it, me and movies do not go hand in hand. I don't think I've watched a proper film, like I've sat and watched a film for probably 5 years. I don't even.
I just find that amazing, Nigel.
No,
I find that
I went to
amazing.
the cinema
I
to see Gladiator 2, and I wasn't very impressed with that. I'd give up.
But I know you obviously spend a lot of time watching sporting events, and that
I don't do that as much as I used to either.
Well, it's quite time consuming watching sports events. I do find that things like the red zone on the NFL, where you just watch, every time somebody's inside the red zone and they're looking like they're going to score a touchdown, they switch to that game. So you're watching like 8 games at once or something, and they're just constantly flicking from one to the other. It's made my attention span much worse. I find it hard to sit and watch just one game, and with all the ad breaks and stuff. If you're watching the red zone, you can just go straight through and no adverts, and you just keep jumping from action to action to action. Because it makes you think, it tricks your brain into thinking that NFL games have touchdowns every 2 minutes, but really, you never watch the boring bits of the game. I don't know. I always find it funny that people say, "Oh, I can't watch a movie that's 3 hours long. That's way too long." There's a movie in the Oscars this year, The Brutalist. It has an intermission because it's such a long film. Everybody needs to go and stretch their legs and go for a break.
Never get me back. Never get me back for part 2. Never.
But people say, people say, "Oh, that's too long. That's too long," and then they go home and they binge watch 18 episodes of some 1 hour long episodes of some series and say how great it is. So I never really understand that. Anyway, I don't do that either.
I don't do that either. Just give you my I've never watched a movie on YouTube. I've never watched a binge series. The only series I've watched binge watch is Afterlife, because I thought the first episode, I watched the second one, I watched that, binge watched that. I've never I think I've gone to the cinema once. My whole life revolves around looking on my phone, looking on Twitter or X, looking at updating podcasts on Instagram, messaging the guys about rotors, checking emails.
You're such a millennial.
My bosses in America send me through. Even when I go on a plane, right? I go on a plane. I just come back from New York. It's a 6.5 hour flight coming back, 7-hour flight going there. I didn't watch one movie. I sit and watch the map on where we are in the world, what altitude we are.
How many books
and if
have
we're
you
going over
read this
Paris,
year?
none. I don't think I've read my whole life. I think probably read 4 books in my whole life.
Oh my God!
I don't read a paper. I don't. Everything, every single thing is from social media,
character.
from Instagram, from. I just spend I've got so much to do in terms of like promoting everything we do here. That the idea of sitting down for 3 hours and turning my phone off, I've got no idea. So all I care about when I'm on a plane, not what the movies are, just whether I can pay for Wi-Fi and just be. If I sit there for 6 hours, have a couple of bets, follow the football match on Flash Score, or follow a couple of tennis matches in Flash Score, and that gets me through the 5 hours. That's all I care about. I couldn't watch a film.
I'm delighted if I get on a plane to actually be off the internet for a few hours and just get a break from it. Anyway, look, I was really looking forward to asking you what you thought about each of these movies, because I thought I'd be interested to hear your opinion. What an absolute disaster.
When you mention these movies, it'll be more of a shock to people that have never watched them.
Well, hopefully people can comment in the chat, in the comments, and tell me which movies they agree with me on, which ones
Just
they
before you
haven't
go on to
seen.
the movies, one thing I would say is that I'm very much a person, if like one of my favorite movies, I've got like 2 or 3 favorite ones. I've watched them like 40 times. I like if I'm flicking through the channels and there is like Back to the Future on, I would rather watch that again than sit through and watch something else. Like, so I've
done that as well.
Countless times. I watch my favorite comedies countless of times, rather than the idea of watching a new comedy show. So I've got to get into it, get past within 2 episodes. Like, everyone's told me to watch these shows that I've never seen, like Breaking Bad. I've never seen. I've watched like 20 seconds of it and thought, not
Sopranos.
Never seen it.
Yeah, well, you've got so much to look forward to. I mean, you can start with this list of movies I'm going to give you anyway.
Okay.
So, first of all, when I was trying to break it down and make 10, the problem with gambling movies is, like, it depends what kind of gambling you're talking about. So there's quite a lot of gambling movies that are sort of about casinos. They're about Vegas and people hanging out in Vegas. But there's actually not really that much gambling going on. So, a movie like Casino, or Bugsy, the movie with Warren Beatty, where he's he plays Bugsy Siegel, and it's like the formation of Vegas. I mean, that's not a perfect movie, but it's if you like gambling, I think it's a good movie. Ocean's 11 is a really fun movie, but basically it's a crime caper.
I've seen that.
But that's not, it's kind of, although it's all in Vegas, it's not really about gambling, is it? There's a scene at the Dogs, and there's lots of scenes in casinos, but there's hardly any gambling in it. But I think gamblers like Ocean's 11 because of that background, but I won't call that a gambling movie. And then you get other movies that are about casino gambling. They're about people playing roulette and dice and, those kind of games. The Cooler, that's quite a good movie about the guy. He's like, in the UK, we would call that a bock. He's a jinx. The casino literally employ him. If they see someone that's winning a lot, they get him to go and stand behind them and put the jinx on it.
Very similar.
He literally got paid to do that. I think it was based on a true story. That was when the mob ran Vegas. That's quite I quite like that movie, actually.
There is a scene. What's the scene? Isn't there a scene in Goodfellas where they go to the races and there's a bock and then they just rip the ticket up when you know that he's bet it? I'm sure it's Goodfellas.
That's not in Goodfellas. I think.
What film's that?
I'm trying to think. They did. Where was the one where they owned a horse? I thought that was maybe in Sopranos. They owned a horse.
No, I think it's Goodfellas. I think they go to the racetrack and this guy's on it, and then they rip all the tickets up. Like it's when he's a kid.
Went to the racetrack. I'm sure Goodfellas.
Okay, I can't remember what it is, but go on. I'll let you go on.
Okay. Then there's another one called 21, which is about the MIT kids that learnt to beat blackjack. I mean, that's quite interesting because I sort of vaguely know a couple of those people, and I found that quite interesting because I sort of know a bit about that world. And Croupier is a good one with Clive Owen. That's in the UK. He sort of goes into the heart of what it means to be a gambler. I mean, that's quite a sort of the English ones are quite grubby, really. I find that when they talk about gambling, it's not glamorous, whereas the American films are a bit more glamorous. But I'm not going to really call any of those gambling films. Let me think. There's other ones that they feature gambling in casinos, but they're not really about gambling. So, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. You must have seen that, surely.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
I mean, do you think of that as a gambling movie? Because obviously the reason they get into trouble is because of this ridiculous, this is like a brag game they're in. It's a form of poker. But the rules of the game are just stupid. And anybody that actually gambles would look at that and think, well, that's just utterly ridiculous.
No, that's not a gambling movie.
Yeah, it's just a gangster movie, isn't it? And like Guys and Dolls has a lot of gambling. The Nathan Detroit runs a floating crap game that moves around the underground of Manhattan. But he's running away from the cops, and there's the main thrust of the story is that betting on a love affair. But I guess it's about gambling, but you don't get to see that much gambling in it. Rain Man, you see gambling. I mean, you must have seen Rain Man. That's
Never
a
seen
bit
it.
of an old classic.
Never seen
Dustin
it.
Hoffman.
I know what it's
And
about, but I've
Tom
never
Cruise.
watched
Yeah.
it.
Well, Dustin Hoffman.
Bronx Tale is the one where they go with the guy.
I
and he
do
jigs
remember
it.
that. That's a great film. I love
Bronx
that. I'd forgotten about that one. That's a lovely film. That.
I've seen that.
So I didn't put those ones in. There's loads of films about poker as well, and obviously, I have a background in poker, so I remember those. I watched Molly's Game on a plane actually, and I know a few of the people that played in the original Molly's Game, and I was quite interested in seeing that. I think it's quite a good film. I don't know whether I enjoyed it that much. One or two of the characters are pretty horrible, and I think the woman that ran the game sort of, she's kind of allowed to big herself up in the film, and I don't know whether I went a lot on that. California Split's a lovely film. That's an old film with Elliot Gould and oh god, I've forgotten who the other person is in it. But that's like a buddy movie about two guys playing poker, and that's a really fun film. I enjoyed that. And Rounders, of course, Rounders in '99 was the classic poker film, and it helped to bring out a kind of a real resurgence in poker in casinos. Everybody thought Rounders was so cool that they wanted to go out and play poker in the casino. I don't know whether sports gambling in a movie could really do that. The ones about con men and scams I like as well. There's a movie called House of Games, which is a David Mamet thing, and it's got a brilliant poker scene in it, and there's a great twist in the plot. That's a really good one about con men. The Grifters is another one that I liked. That's got some gambling in it, and Angelica Houston has to go to the track to put money on the horses for the mob in order to get the payouts of favourites to be lower. That's got a bit of gambling in it, and of course the Sting, that's got some kind of con men and grifters in it. Anyway, I managed to and then the last thing I was going to say was there's movies that again they're about gambling and gamblers like them, but they're not gambling in the kind of it's not sports gambling, it's not gambling in a casino. So The Color of Money and The Hustler. I think The Hustler's better, actually. The Color of Money was the sequel. The Hustler from, back in the 60s is a brilliant movie about pool playing. But really, it's about gambling. It's, the guys go on the road playing pool for money. And the whole thing is about gambling. Moneyball is another one. You never saw that, Nige? God,
I've never seen Moneyball. I've never seen The Sting.
I think you'd like
Colour of
Moneyball.
Money. I've never seen Hustler.
So Moneyball is about the way that the Oakland A's, the baseball team, were able to compete with teams with much bigger budgets because they used analytics, and they were the first team to use it. And they basically employed this kind of geeky fat kid to figure out which kind of players they should sign, who they can get cheaply because they've got obvious flaws that all the other teams hate. And they sign up these players, and then they start having a brilliant winning sequence. And of course, that's a true story. That's exactly what's happened in baseball, and analytics and Moneyball has transformed baseball. And to an extent, it started to come in the NFL. But it's interesting how in all of the sports, and in soccer as well, you get it all the time. People say, "Well, I don't believe in XG." You say that yourself a little bit sometimes, I think. And definitely the sort of establishment in baseball said, well, this is all nonsense what these people are doing. But of course, then eventually they could see the success, and the sport is about money, essentially. And eventually the Boston Red Sox basically took over the ideas that the Oakland A's were doing, and now they can't really do it anymore because everyone's doing it. But, although there's literally no gambling in the film, I think gamblers really like that film because it talks about sports and analytics. Anyway, I came up with 5, so I'm going to quickly run through them, and you can note them down so that you can get round to watching them at some stage. But if anyone's watched any of these, or loves any of them, or hates any of them, or has got anything to say about them, feel free to comment, because I'm interested to hear what you think. So number 5, I've gone for a film. I don't think this is actually really a great film, but it definitely is about sports gambling, and that makes it interesting. And it's called Lay the Favourite. Now, Lay the Favourite is a film about the sadly departed Alan Dinkinson. Now, you may never have heard of Dink, but Dink was a legend in gambling in the 90s and noughties, really, around the Vegas area. He set up originally as a bookie in New York, and he got busted, and in traditional American fashion, he couldn't do that anymore, and he decided he better move to Vegas, and that's lots of people have done that. He was considered to be the best judge in the world of college basketball. So when March Madness came round, he would position himself in the sports books. He'd have all kinds of runners, and the first lines that went up, they were weak lines, and people would put up some college to win by 4 points or something. And he would bet it and bet it and bet it and keep betting it until it got to 8 or 9 or something like that. He wasn't afraid to really lay in, and the first number he might only be able to get $5,000 on, then he'd have 20 grand at the next number, 20 grand at the next number. He was a proper gambler. And this film, Lay the Favourite, is about his life. Basically, he signed up this woman who somehow he met this lap dancer called Beth.
Now
and
it's got my attention. Now exactly. The movie takes a bit of a twist.
And it tells the story of how she becomes his apprentice. It's directed by Stephen Frears, who's an English director from London. He's directed some great films, actually. The slightly disappointing thing was that some friends of mine told me that he consulted them. He got them to come round for a beer one night and asked them to tell him all about gambling so he could learn more about gambling to make a better movie. And they felt afterwards that he just ignored everything they said. And actually, some of the gambling scenes in the film are a bit slightly nonsense. But it is very rare in a movie, to watch people actually putting sports bets on. And he has this kind of office in Vegas, just off the strip, kind of behind the Bellagio, in a kind of warehouse, and it's full of screens, and there's a bunch of kids there, and they're all watching the numbers, and then they're hitting the phones to ring Costa Rica and get their bets on, and then they're sending runners around the strip with bags of cash. I just, I love all that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's my number 5. Number 4 is a movie called Bob le Flambeur. I bet you've never heard of that. It's a French film. It's a 1956.
I've never watched. What odds do you give me? I've never watched The Sting, The Hustler, or Rain Man.
I mean, once you told me you hadn't watched The Sting, you were like, I wouldn't take 1,000 to 1. You'd watch Bob le Flambeur. I mean,
watch Bob the Builder.
I'd be quite surprised if any viewer has watched Bob le Flambeur. It's a pretty obscure film. It's a 1956 film noir, and it's basically a former bank robber is in Paris, where he operates as a professional gambler. He's a bit of a card player. He stays up late. He sort of goes around these kind of dodgy clubs. He bets on the horses. And it just kind of reminded me of something you would see on UK TV, something like The Swede or Minder or something like that. He was just a kind of dodgy character. Anyway, some guy contacts him and says, well, we want to do a heist. We're going to rob the casino in Deauville when the horse race meeting's on. And the safe's going to be full of money. And it's a brilliant film. It's really good. If you can get hold of it, I think it's called Bob the Player in some places, I think. But anyway, Bob le Flambeur. And the guy who directed Hard 8 and also the people behind Ocean's 11 said that this film was a major influence on them and that they would never have made their films if they'd never seen Bob le Flambeur. So I'd really recommend that if no one's seen that. Number 3 is a film called The Gambler. Now, The Gambler stars 2 people who, even though you haven't watched many films, I'm going to suggest that you've seen the films that these 2 people are most famous for. So James Caan is most famous for being Sonny Corleone in The Godfather. You must have watched The Godfather.
I've seen The Godfather. Yes.
Okay, thank God for that. I'd bet minus 800 that
I was in New York. I was in New York last week with Bet Rivers, member of staff who's never seen the Godfather
well, that
movie.
Person needs to get and watch The Godfather. And you've already mentioned the other movie, so you obviously have watched that. Paul Sorvino from Goodfellas. He plays Paulie in Goodfellas.
Now that is That is my number 2 favorite movie of all time.
Well, I thought that would be up there. I've watched that over 100 times. I could imagine that you would have done as well. So Paulie from Goodfellas and Sonny from The Godfather star in this movie, The Gambler. It's a 1974 film. There's about 3 films called The Gambler, so make sure you get the right one. And basically, the main character is a gambling addict, And he keeps betting bigger and bigger on the NBA. He loves betting on NBA. And I remember there's one scene where he's lying in the bath listening to an NBA game, and he's kind of flicking the ball as if he's like going for a free throw. And he needs this free throw to land a kind of 50 grand bet. And it's right at the end of the game on the buzzer. And yeah, I mean, it's basically he wins and loses a fortune. The bookies that he's betting with are illegal, so he gets in trouble with the mob. He needs to borrow lots of money, and eventually, to try and get him out of trouble, he gets involved in fixing games because he's a college lecturer, and some of the kids that he teaches are involved in playing sports. So it's honestly, well, it really highlights someone going into the pits of addiction. This guy is a proper sicko. And actually, whenever I've watched this film, I haven't watched it for years, but I feel like you need a shower afterwards. It's just really, it doesn't make you love gambling if you watch it. But anyway, The Gambler, that's a 1974. A similar one, and also an absolute classic, is a film called Owning Mahoney, which is my number 2. I'm sure you won't have seen this one because it's fairly obscure. It stars the great Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's sadly departed this world. And he plays a bank manager with a massive gambling problem. So I don't know whether you can figure out how those two things might come together to make a plot of a movie. Obviously, what could possibly go wrong? He decides to get involved in an enormous bank fraud in order to fund his gambling. That is a brilliant movie. Philip Seymour Hoffman is fantastic in it, and that's my number 2.
What's it called
number
again?
1.
What's it called again, that one? What's the name of that movie?
That's called Owning Mahoney, Mahoney. A really good film. I really recommend that. Number 1 is just a real favourite of mine. It may not be the best gambling movie of all time. I'm sure some people would say, I don't know, Ocean's 11 or Rounders or I don't know, just loads of other things, Casino, loads of those things like that. But I like the ones that really show people betting. And The Sting is just a terrific movie. It's got a bit of a heist element to it. It's got the con merchants. It's got gambling. Basically, this guy, these two con men decide that they're going to take revenge on a big gangster who's done a bad thing to them. He's killed their friend, and they're going to take revenge by doing a huge con job on him. And the way they set up the con job is that it's going to be horse race betting. So they set up a fake bookies with all actors pretending to have bets, and then they tell this guy that they set up a fake telegram, like a sort of post office telegram service, and they say that the horse race results to the bookies are delayed by 30 seconds. But if you can get inside the telegram office, you can see the results before the rest of the country knows the results. And they get the guy to believe that, and they get him betting, and he has a few bets, and they all win. And then, of course, once they get him to do the really big bet, they're going to, it's not going to work out for him. And there's a classic line where they during one of the practice runs, because he gets a phone call to tell him which horse to bet. And during one of the practice runs, they ring him up. He answers the payphone to find out which horse he's got to bet on. And they say, place it on Blue Note. And he rushes in and says, can I have $10,000 on Blue Note? And they say, well, that's quite a big bet. We'll have to consult. Oh, there's only 20 seconds till they're running. Yeah, go on, you've got it. And he's on Blue Note. And Blue Note finishes second. But during the race, the guy comes in that's done the phone call and says, did you put it on Blue Note to place? And he says, no, I put it on to win. He says, but I said place it on Blue Note. You were supposed to bet it to place. And that's a brilliant one. I love that because that's got a specific gambling thing that only gamblers would really understand.
I've got an idea for a movie, a new one. You've said it there. We could basically. I don't think the ending will be very good. We can get a heist. Yeah.
Yes.
We get someone to say it's a fake job. We get him to place 10,000 quid on it. He has the 10,000 quid. Then we get the heist. We get the plan, and then all of a sudden he gets an email to verify his affordability check. He has to send all his bank statements,
proof of funds,
6-month bank statements to show where he is. and the heist doesn't get going, and the heist does come, and we only manage to get 30 quid down on
That's
the
the
heist.
sequel.
That's not a bad movie, is it, from
Yeah.
nowadays?
That is how the movies are going these days. But the thing I love about The Sting is there's a brilliant cast. It's Paul Newman and Robert Redford. But the person they cheat is Robert Shaw, who was one film that I'm sure you'll have watched is Jaws, and Robert
Yep.
Shaw is Quint in Jaws. He was a ferocious alcoholic, Robert Shaw. He could barely stay sober to film any of the scenes. But there's a scene in The Sting where Paul Newman, they need to get some money to fund their operation, this whole con that they're doing. So they decide to get the money from him. They just do a small con on him first. So they get into a poker game with him and win all his money, and they use that money to finance the whole sting. But the poker game is a brilliant scene. It's one of the best poker scenes in the whole of movies. And, for that reason, I love The Sting. It's got great music. It's a really good film. If you've never watched The Sting, of all the films I've mentioned, you should start with The Sting, because I think you'd love it. It's a fun movie, and it's about gambling.
Been recommended to me countless times. I remember working at my very first job with my sports editor at the time, Derek McGuffin, who said it was his favourite film of all time. He told me to watch it. Other people have told me to watch it. But again...
You got a busy afternoon today?
Yes, I have. I'm recording Game Bet Match straight after this with Sean Calvert. Then I have at 4 o'clock, I have to do Betting Weekly Live. And
tomorrow?
Then I'm going to see Bromley v Bradford.
What about tomorrow?
Tomorrow, Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. Meetings.
No. You've got too many shows, Nigel. You should delegate more.
Then I've got to tweet them. Then I've got to put Instagram on. Then I've got to do all the messages.
I think you can get the missus settled down with a pizza tomorrow night and watch The Sting. That'll be lovely.
Do you know what I'm going to do? This is a promise to you, Neil. This is an absolute promise what I'm going to do. Then on the next trip I'm on, my long haul trip, is I'm going to Miami for the tennis in March.
Yeah.
I'm going to binge watch a couple of those gambling movies on the way there, on the way back.
I promise you'll love Bob LaFleur, you'll love The Sting. Lay the Favourite, you'll probably say that's not the best film I've ever watched, but it is definitely all about gambling, and it's got plenty of Vegas and plenty of gambling in it. And Owning Mahoney and The Gambler, you might sign the pledge and quit gambling when you watch those two.
Well, I'm going to start with The Sting, and I haven't seen it before, and we'll have a look at it.
Well, I think you'd be doing yourself a favour for sure. Before we go, do you want an Oscars bet from me?
Well, I want you to tell me before we go. I want you to tell me. You've said there's a sort of a French kind of.
Well, maybe we could make a movie about this, because I think this would make a great movie. I don't know if you saw this in the papers this week. It's been on the BBC News. This guy, for some reason, decided to park his car. He was just popping in the shops really quickly. And I don't know whether he didn't lock it or he wasn't very secure, but he left his wallet in open sight in the front of the car. I think this was in Toulouse in France. And sure enough...
How ironic that it was in that
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And sure enough, two homeless guys that were walking past, it's not clear from the story whether they kind of smashed his window or whether they just opened the door or the window was open or something. But anyway, they managed to get hold of his wallet. And they're loving life. Suddenly they're straight into the shops. Now he got back to his car quite quickly and realised that somebody had stolen his wallet, and he rang the bank and he cancelled his cards and all this kind of thing. But they'd had 10 minutes in between, and that was all they needed. They spent €52 in the local shop, in this kind of 7-Eleven shop. And they bought some booze, they bought some cigarettes, and they bought some lottery tickets. And that was what they spent the €52 on. So well played to them. Lo and behold, they won the lottery. 500,000.
That's incredible. Incredible.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? But they haven't come forward, presumably because they're terrified that if they come forward, they're going to get arrested.
The other thing, if they're homeless, how do they know they've got the winning ticket? Because they haven't got a phone or haven't got a television. How would they know?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they're waiting till the newspaper in the library. They can check the results or something like that.
But how does the guy know that he's?
I think the shop owner must have. I'm guessing the shop owner must have said that he's waiting for the winners to come forward. And maybe, I think the lottery do that, don't they? Don't they kind of normally promote it and say that someone's won it, but you
Yeah.
need to come forward. Anyway, the guy whose wallet it was, who sort of paid for the tickets, although he didn't know he was paying for them, has come out in the media and said if they'd like to come forward, he will insist that no charges are made. He doesn't care about the fact that they broke into his car. He doesn't care about the fact that they stole his wallet. No harm has come. As long as they agree to split the money, he gets $250,000 and they get $250,000. He won't press any charges. He'll shake their hand and they can go off and start a new life, and he'll have $250,000 in his back pocket. But the lottery people have said they're trying to fight against this. They say that effectively these tickets were not legally bought, so nobody should win from it. The guy whose money was used didn't intend to buy any lottery tickets, and the people who bought the tickets should never have been allowed to. So I think they're trying to not pay out. I don't know how this is going to come out. I don't know what, if anyone knows what would happen in the UK or in America in this situation. I have no idea. It seems, I feel like lawyers are going to get quite a lot of this money over the years. This is going to go on and on.
Well, I mean, I'd be amazed if they're homeless that they know they've won it, or that I can't imagine having someone where you store the winning lottery ticket. I don't understand why they bought it in the first place. They probably don't. They're probably totally unaware that they've bought it.
I think this could make a great movie. This could be
a brilliant movie.
This could be one that you could watch, I think.
Well, we could be the role. I mean, we could be. I could be the guy who's lost the wallet, and you could.
You're
be the
saying I could
guy.
play the homeless guy? Yeah, that's nice.
You've had a haircut.
Nice.
You were in a suit
haircut
the other day.
You
were in a suit the other day. What was all that about? On the television,
behavior.
Someone put
Absolutely
a brilliant comment.
shocking.
I saw someone put a brilliant comment on the on that when you was on set. You're at home in your suit. He said Neil goes to the studio with his t-shirt and jeans, but when he's at home, he wears his suit. What was all that? What was the suit about?
I put a suit on for a joke. I actually didn't have any trousers on, and they were interviewing me on TV, and it was a Zoom thing. So I put a suit on, thinking it would be funny if at the end of the interview I stood up and I didn't have any trousers on. But they cut away from me quite quickly at the end. I didn't have time to do the joke.
I think for the Oscars, I think you should have I thought you'd have an Oscars kind of theme, like a suit.
I should have been wearing a tux today, shouldn't I?
Should have.
Yeah, I missed out there. Sorry about that.
Before we go, Neil, here's the Oscars. There is a multitude of different markets available on the Bet Rivers website, but do check out the states where they are available.
Have you got the prices in front of you?
I've got them here. Yeah.
Tell me, what do they make Adrian Brody to be the best actor?
Adrian Brody. I'm going to find this right. The best actor. Adrian Brody is the heavy favourite, -225.
Okay, well, I like that. I've bet him at -225. Now, what's happened in the last few days is that Timothy Chalamet, it's basically between the two of them, and Timothy Chalamet, who played Bob Dylan in the biopic A Complete Unknown, he won the Screen Actors Guild for Best Actor, and suddenly he went from +350 into +175, a typical example of something we talk about on this show all the time, recency bias. Everybody got completely carried away. Now, the prices have sort of come back into line a bit more now. But I think if Adrian Brody had won the Screen Actors Guild, he'd have been about -400 for the Best Actor Oscar now. And I don't think the Screen Actors Guild makes that much difference. The Oscars had already finished their voting before the Screen Actors Guild Award was given out. The Oscars finished their voting at the middle of last week. So I don't think it has such a huge effect on who wins the Oscar. And I think Adrian Brody at -225. I know it's not a hugely sexy price, but I think that's a really good bet, and I've had quite a bit on that, and I'm pretty happy with that one. Is that enough, or do you want some more?
Give us one more before you go. Go on, one more.
I'll give you one more. I'll try and find a slightly bigger one. Editing, the best editing.
Let's have a look. Best editing. John Izzard for Betting Weekly Studios, -$3. Favourite. The best film editing Oscars. What have we got to go for? What movie?
Is Conclave the favourite?
Yeah, -162.
Okay, well, I think Conclave is a bit of a good thing in this category. Anora is the second favourite at around about what is it? What are they, Nora? Plus
Plus
175 or something like
175.
that. Oh, that's a good guess. I think Conclave should be a bit shorter, basically. I was looking at a thing the other day. They had a panel of experts where they asked them what they thought for each Oscar. And they had 30 experts, and 20 of them went for Conclave. And then I looked in another magazine, and they had 11 people who were editors in this Screen magazine, and 8 of them went for Conclave, and only 1 went for Anora. And on that basis, I thought this price looked a bit good. I must admit, I've had closer to even money about Conclave in this category, but I am still backing Conclave at these kind of prices, and I think that makes for a good bet. I think Conclave will have a good night. I don't really think it will win Best Picture. I think Anora will win Best Picture. I mean, the thing about the Oscars is there are 23 categories. There was one year, just a few years ago, where all 23 favourites won. And you don't get that many upsets in the Oscars. You don't get too many plus 800 chances winning. You were talking about hair and makeup before. The favourite is less than $10. It's
me and you talking about hair and makeup.
And a lot of like costume design, Wicked is minus 2,000. I mean, a lot of these are kind of we can pretty much guess the result without too much doubt. But hopefully there's a couple there that will give you,
Are you still doing your full
price.
write-ups for Betting Emporium? You're doing a full
I haven't done any write-ups, so maybe I'll do something for Saturday for the free tip of the week. I don't know, but by then maybe it'll be editing and it'll be minus 250. I don't know whether I like it quite so much at minus 250, but at minus 162, I think that's okay. I could do that still.
If you want to get Neil's full thoughts on the Oscars, you can have a look at his website, bettingemporium.com. The guys,
I haven't put anything up there yet, but I might do. Now you've nudged me into it.
Now you've got to do it now. You've got to get a load of people. So have a look on there. There'll be a free bet from Neil, maybe a write-up as well. I don't want to put too much pressure on because he's watching a lot of movies this weekend. He doesn't want to do any work. Unfortunately, I've got lots of work to do. I won't be able to watch any movies. That's been it for this Oscars special of the Betting Weekly Dojo. We will be back next week on a Monday. Before we go, Neil, what have they got to do? What have these people got to do?
Well, definitely they've got to hit like. I mean, that doesn't cost anything. Just press the like button. You can also press the subscribe button, which also doesn't cost you anything. It's free to do. And we're trying to get to 8,000 subscribers. Make sure you join us on the dojo each week. If you've got any thoughts on my top 5, if you've seen Bob Le Flambert, put it in the comments. I'd like to know. I'd like to know how many of our viewers have watched Bob Le Flambert. I'm suspecting not very many.
What's your over-under? Bob Le Flambert viewers?
3.5.
Really? I'll pay 3.5. This is the gambling community. And there's a lot of like your poker, a lot of sort of people who follow you on the poker scene who will love gambling movies. I'm over 3.5. Big over 3.5.
It's a French film with subtitles. I mean, that's not going to have many.
If you haven't watched Bob Le Flambert, please say you have, and then I can win this wager as well. So that's how the reason why. I think this is a very educated group. The only person who isn't educated in the group is me. Don't read any books. Don't watch any films. Just
I'll be looking forward next week to hearing your views on The Sting and whether you enjoyed it.
I will be watching that. The only gambling thing I remember is Jack Duckworth having a dog bet treble, and it all falling out. Listening to commentary in the Rovers' return, and it didn't have to go down to Barlow's to pick up the Reddies. That's been it for
one for our stateside audience there. Yeah,
exactly. Watch it. Coronation Street. It's the longest soap in the UK. That's it for this week's Betting Dojo. We will be back on Monday, looking at all the talking points in the world of gambling. As Lil said, please comment on anything you've liked here, any films we've missed from that top 5, anything you recommend. Any gambling movies that Neil hasn't watched? I don't believe that. And any gambling movies I have watched, I don't think there is many of them either. But that's it for the week. Have a good week. Take care. And the Oscars Monday, head across to the Bet Rivers website. Remember what state you are. We'll have different markets, but currently there is 23 different markets on all the different categories, which is a long night over in the Oscars in LA. Take care. We'll speak to you all again next week.